Welcome to the Consultancy Edge. I'm your host, Matt Hodkinson, and this week I speak with Florian Heinrichs of the Visible Authority. We talked about Florian's journey through his marketing consultancy and recently joining forces with Luke Smyers, formerly of this parish, and what they're doing now to transform the way that consultancies form their own propositions and take them to market. We talked about some of the emerging threats and trends in the sector, including one of our favourite topics, AI. And we also wrapped up with our usual snog, marry, avoid. Let's get into this week's interview with Florian. Welcome to the Consultancy Edge, Florian Heinrichs. Hello.
Hey, Matt. Thanks for having me on.
No problem at all. I've been looking to do this for a while. Obviously, we've been connected for some considerable time.
Yeah.
And been a big fan of your work in the whole marketing space. And of course, recently, as we record this, you've gone into a full kind of formal partnership with Luke Smyers, who's previously been on this podcast, of course.
Yeah.
Talk to us about what you're now doing together at the Visible Authority.
Well, I think we're combining our sort of slightly overlapping, but then still very distinct expertise, right? Luke, as you listeners might know, has been in the trenches, as they say, right? He had a corporate career before founding his own consulting firm. And then he grew that and sold it quite successfully. Sold to Deloitte, where he stayed for a bit, helped grow the then practice even further. And then they made him help out other practices as well. So he collected some experience around this idea of just improving consultancy performance overall.
Yeah.
In the meantime, so sort of in parallel, I did a professional services marketing career, for lack of a better words. I did that both in-house. I started way back when at Deloitte for a bit, and then I moved on to the agency side, continued to work with professional services firms all the time, which in a bit of a broader sense, that included some law firms, architects, I don't know, but primarily, funnily enough, still consulting firms, management consulting, IT consulting. Had another in-house role. Then again, I was a marketing leader, senior manager inside Accenture for one of the faster growing businesses there. And then I stepped out. And I'm not going to speak for Luke here in full, but it feels like he was sort of the operator guy, that's my words of describing it, who knows how to run the business, and who he will tell you himself that he sometimes got frustrated with the marketing teams, the marketing functions he came across. We can discuss the reasons. I was the opposite. I was the marketing guy. I tried to do some things a bit differently, but felt as I stepped outside and sort of started to do consulting work outside of Accenture for other firms, I could never quite get all the strategic decisions consultancy marketing needs as inputs, right? For them to be able to do the work. And so we just combined forces and we said, hey, look, you're the operating guy missing the marketing person. I'm the marketing person who would like to be involved when strategy gets discussed, operating model gets discussed, service lineup gets discussed. And we are combining this. And the actual core proposition right now of the Visible Authority is just helping consultancies push for higher performance. We've built a bit of IP over the past 3 years, a bit of a methodology there, and this will be close to your heart. Would say it starts with positioning, and it evolves around this idea to go to change how the firm goes to market and to change what and how it delivers.
You mentioned the IP, and I know that you've coined some language as well, which I'm always looking out for, this intentional consultancy design. And that seems like a response from you guys to the challenges like cost inflation, client indecision that, consultancies really do consistently suffer. So can you elaborate on that concept of intentional consultancy design? Easy for me to say.
Intentional design. It's meant to be a bit rude by design, right? It's a bit provocative, but we figured that the default state or the typical way to found a consultancy, right? Describing that, it's a generalization, I get that, but for a large majority of the firms, it's just 2 or 3 smart people, right? Probably working in some existing firm, deciding to step outside, start their own thing. And they start by selling a capability. Like they say, we are experts in X, so we sell that expertise. And that means, generally speaking, their sales pitch is, oh, we know X. who here needs some X, right? I don't have to talk to you about why that is a difficult pitch, but still it's difficult, but it's viable. So typically, because we're talking smart people, they have existing networks and so forth, they find some initial success. Um, and that's perfectly okay. And it works up to a point. Because it's not intentional, it's organic, the organic way. I'm not going to say chaotic, but organic, somewhat opportunistic, somewhat reactive way of growing the firm, right? You sell the capability, you chase the opportunities that present themselves, and you find work that way. And that creates some obstacles, some challenges, which, depending on where you want to take the firm, might get in your way. All of those have to do with the fact that if I just sell an unrefined capability and I chase whatever opportunity might fit to that capability, right? I'm saying yes to everything I could potentially service to grow the firm. That means all I really ever do is increase the variance I have inside the firm, right? There's huge variance between this, lots of almost every engagement or many engagements will be different. It's not much repeatability, so learning is constrained. I'm reinventing the wheel probably quite a lot, right? I'm stuck in not very productive sales processes, pitches, RFPs, all that stuff. So I might still grow, sure, but that growth typically gets more difficult over time. Margins come under pressure, and I'm always at risk of being replaced because I'm stuck in such a commodity position, right? Because the next three guys with similar education to mine, similar background, and there will probably be hundreds of them out there, could just do what I do. So
Yeah,
that's
well,
that's not
that's the danger
that's not
with
great.
that capabilities approach, isn't it? Is that there are hundreds, thousands of others, quite often consultancies
Yeah,
positioned around that capability. What are some of the other challenges that people come to you with, Florian? What are the things that you see most often that are really holding those consultancies back from achieving their marketing goals and everything that goes beyond?
that's literally just that. When I said earlier, it's our value proposition is helping clients to change how they go to market and what they sell. So if you bear with me for the capability selling part, that would be the default or the non-intentionally designed go to market. They say we have a capability, we offer a capability, that's our pitch. What do we actually sell? Well, you end up selling capacity, right? You have so and so many hours on the bench that you can do the thing. So, and that's broken for a variety of reasons. I get back to your question for more challenges. We say, how about we change this and you go to market with a clear proposition? So the promise to solve a business issue to a certain end, to facilitate a specific outcome. That's your go-to market, and what you then deliver is that outcome you just promised. That changes the game quite a bit. And you ask for challenges. Well, clients come to us because they say, well, we have trouble generating inbound demand, right? This will be maybe familiar to you. Yeah, of course, because if you offer a commodity, if your pitch is, I know X, who here needs X, you put all the burden on the clients, first and foremost. They have to figure out whether or not they might be able to use your expertise, which that's their effort, right? Nobody wants to expense that many calories to figure out whether they could hire you or not. Those times are over. So lead gen is one issue we hear a lot. Next one then is even the firms that say, well, we're doing sort of okay with lead gen, but win rates are not great, right? So either compared to benchmark or when they look at their internal costs, or sometimes it's a personnel issue. You might have heard this, right? They will have two, three guys in the firm who are really good at selling stuff. Everybody else doesn't. So win rates are highly dependent on who's delivering the pitch. That typically creates constraints. Then there's the issue of, okay, we're somewhat decent with lead gen. We're okay with the win rate, but then it's weird. Once we get the deal, we're on this order taker positioning. Like we're not being taken really seriously by the clients. They send us stuff on Thursday, say, hey, can you do this by Friday, end of business? And when we send the email, they're gone for the weekend, right? So it's sort of this weird relationship where, hey, we were supposed to be the advisors here, but it's pretty clear you're actually just a service provider, right? So it's how many opportunities do you have to win? How often do you win? And then once you won it, is it really the type of work you wanted to have in the first place? Like, do you have the positioning, not in the marketing sense, but in the relationship, right? Is that doing all right?
Yeah.
And then downstream from that, you have all the stresses and problems with growing the business. Like we are because of the issues we have here, we say yes to lots of stuff because we need to protect revenue. That means we pick up ill-fit engagements, not the most profitable ones. We have to reinvent the villain delivering. All of that compresses margins. Also burns out your people, right? So it's stressful work working in a capability selling firm, right? 60-hour weeks, manager can't tell you what to do, figure it out in your own guys, all that stuff. Which is not everybody's cup of tea, and it does you don't have to work that way, to be quite blunt about it. It could be different. And then the last one, which to be honest, not something we necessarily list as a primary pain point we tackle with our offering, but we hear it a lot, is the talent retention. There's a legion of boutique owning principals who say, we had this one like young colleague. She was really great. She was doing okay. She developed beautifully inside the firm. Now she's really great. And the moment you've brought them to the point of coaching, to the point that they develop to a point where they're now really truly excellent consultant, they leave for a bigger brand or a better firm. Yeah, because to your earlier point, what you're doing is a commodity. So it's comparable. So they will compare you. And if there's 10% more salary over here for doing the same stuff, yeah, I'll leave. Right. So, and I guess that will all be familiar to you because you do positioning work and to the listeners, but that's pretty much, these are the downstream detractors of not having a clear-cut proposition, or if you probably call it a positioning. And we have some numbers to put to this, right? We often say if you have a target revenue you're shooting for, you should be able to get 30% of that target revenue from net new clients, and they should primarily come to you via inbound, period. You should end up at 50% or above gross margin, which that, depending on who's listening to this podcast, people say, yeah, easy, we have that. You'd be surprised at the numbers of firms who don't have that. I'm talking 50% project gross margin, so cost to the revenue from the project minus the cost to deliver it at the point of delivery. So not when we answer the RFP and have our spreadsheet open, but at the end of it, with all hours tracked, not everybody can cross the 50% threshold. So yeah, that's
Yeah, I
what we
think
mean by high performance.
I'll give a shout out at that point as well to the Consultancy Growth Network, who provide their bench press report annually, and they extol the virtues of a 50% gross margin. They've benchmarked over 300 consultancies typically every year to kind of gather those numbers in. So if you're interested in that, dear listener, then jump over to the Consultancy Growth Network and get involved in the bench press report. So Florian, I mean, one of the things that we've been hearing a lot recently from clients is this idea, cost inflation at the same time as client hesitation, lots of geopolitical factors, of course, that might be weighing into those kind of decisions and delays when it comes to getting that proposal under the right noses and trying to shoot for that sign on the dotted line. I mean, that they tend to have extended. There's long sales cycles going on. There is hesitation. How should consulting firms, and assuming that they've fixed their positioning, they're looking really good, they're not commoditized at this stage, what can they be doing to really incentivize clients to really get them across the line?
Well, truth be told, so what I've been shouting this for a rooftop for a while now. If you forget our language of capability selling versus selling a proposition, if you forget about that, I can simplify that further and say, if you as a firm cannot make a business case for hiring you, much like my asset manager, financial planner at a bank would make a suggestion for me for an investment, right? Here's what you get back for every dollar you put in. If your firm is not in position to do that yet, it's not quite time to panic, but it will be soon. And I'm serious about this because you mentioned the hesitancy, the stuff on the client side. That is true. Meanwhile, and I'm looking at the global market now. Not all of this will be true in the UK, but if you look at how the US is, the GSA, General Service Administration in the US, now instructing their institutions to effectively cut loose all the consulting firms that are delivering non-essential work.
Yeah,
you will see other states pick that up. So that's the pressure of make the business case or be out in the federal services domain. You can expect that to maybe pop up in other places as well. Soft spend, as they call it, being scrutinized everywhere. We haven't mentioned yet the fact that software and AI, I don't want to go on about the AI babble too much, but there are solutions out there. People can check out. Fifth Row is one name that comes up. Operand is another company that is out there with aggressive messaging. Operand says we're building the AI to kill McKinsey. Fifth row has message on the headline, consulting as a service, automate consultants, right? I have an opinion on that stuff. Everybody who's played with agentic AI knows that, let's be careful what I'm saying, is very early stages, right? So it might be some distance for them to cover until they really can deliver on their promise. But the messaging is out there and the software is dirt cheap, right? So clients are seeing that. So all the points you mentioned, that's only going to add to it. And then below that is an entire plethora of software that rarely gets mentioned, but it's not cool AI, but that's doing that same work of eating away at the billable commodity hour for years. Like if you look into process mining, for example, how many hours that's taken out of process engineering, like all what we did in the past, right? As a junior consultant, fly over to that factory, interview four guys for a week, right? Bill all those hours. That's gone. It's been gone for years. So that change is fully happening. So what you just said, let's presume you fixed your positioning, you fixed your proposition, which that is already a big lift, I would argue. But for the sake of your question, once you've done that, you better make sure that everything that comes after that is, and then that's our language again, intentionally designed to the point where you can almost, like a software company would call it, experiment and test it and validate it to the point where you get hard data points in hand.
Yeah.
So you can go back and make that proposition that is equivalent to a business case and not just saying, we know X, do you need some X, right? That's it's not dead. I'm not going to say, oh, this is dead in 2025. All I'm saying I think the way we spoke about it was maybe this is the last year where you really get time and breathing space to do the homework you urgently need to do. 2026, 7, it's already a firefighting drill, right? To fix those
I
bits and
guess
pieces. Yeah.
that kind of movement in the markets, the emergence of certain technologies as well, Florian. I mean, I think there's a perception sometimes that the proposition design, that this intentional design process that you extol the virtues of,
Yeah.
is a once and done thing. But of course, we have to be
No.
agile, though. We have to bake agile into the modern consultancy to reflect on those changes that are happening. How, I mean, tactically, sort of logistically, how do consultancies really stay on top of those changes, do you feel?
Well, the reason or the practical point here is that you got to be doing this all the time. It's never just like a website or just like your sales thing. It should never be finished.
Mm.
And the way we work on it with clients is we take them through a process so they get to their first proposition and service lineup and a couple of other subsequent parts. But the other part of the package is by doing that, we teach them the process. And then the clear recommendation is, boy, you got to be doing this every year, which, to be honest, many firms have that structure in place. There will be an offsite every year or a partnership meeting, or maybe they have some advisory board. So those types of questions are being worked on. Typically, what's missing is the theory or the methodology underneath it, underpinning it at the front end. So this idea of, how do we get a crisp proposition? How do we build the business case? And then you asked about the marketing techniques. So the methodology of shaping the proposition is missing, and maybe the rigor in the process. What's also missing is the rigor then in translating that into execution. But if you come out of the tip, I mean, I've done dozens of those in my career, so let's just talk about my own stuff. I've done positioning and messaging exercises like by the metric ton probably for senior firm leadership, and we know the drill, right? It's a Friday afternoon before everybody gets to fly home from the offsite, right? It's the second last slot. Marketing runs it with very little insight into the actual business on the ground, and you produce a message house PowerPoint that then goes nowhere, right? At no point gets the question, is there any answer given to the question, okay, but what's the marketing team going to do with that stuff next Wednesday, right? So the connecting of the proposition, which we deliberately think of as that's the strategy. So the connection from the strategy into not just the tactical execution, but also the part that goes in the middle. Like, what are the structures, right? What's the architecture, for example, you need in your marketing organization to then deliver that? What are the processes that often does not get built? And sorry to repeat that, intentionally. And you know this how this typically works. An organically growing firm grows to the point where they say, we got to do some marketing around here. I think someone figured out the math once. I can't give credit anymore because it wasn't me. But I think there seems to be a magic threshold at 25 people in the firm FTE, that's when you're big enough to say, okay, we can afford a person to do marketing almost full time. So then they either hire someone, probably junior because that's cheap, or they make it someone's extra job, right, at the of the consultants. And that's so disconnected from real business strategy. It never goes anywhere. And that's also, yeah, that's broken. And that would be the next back to your question. Sorry. If you have sorted the strategy, now your focus is to think about what's the system? How do we build the engine, right, to go to market with that new strategy as effectively and as efficiently as we can. And then you have to ask equivalent questions about, okay, how are we going to deliver against the proposition? But that's not what you asked, right? But the systematization is the big next step.
Yeah, no, important to be able to back it up with the actual doing of the work, of course. But one of the things I wanted to get your opinion on, Florian, is this desire by many consultancies to productize their offering in bigger and better
Yeah.
ways, and I wondered how that kind of sits with you versus this idea of, customized expertise and becoming boutique experts.
Yeah.
How have you seen productization work really well? Where has it kind of fallen down? What are your thoughts on productization as a whole in the world of consultancy?
So I've spoken to many experts. I also hear lots of interest in the productization idea from PE firms. So I'm not stupid. I know that there's a clear expectation around firms doing that. I will still take the opposing stance. I say you cannot productize as a consulting firm without leaving the category. If you productize expertise, you end up having a book, a course, a piece of software. Congratulations. Now you're an author, a trainer, or you're a software company. You're no longer a consultant. The trick with consultancy is the application of frameworks, expertise, knowledge, templates. Like you can have prefabricated stuff, and I'm very much for that.
Yeah,
But the customized application of that is your discipline, always has been, and let's not kid ourselves. So that's my stance on the productization. However, so I'm a bit critical, or I'm a bit allergic to it. However, that doesn't free you from um, formularizing and defining and frameworking and process describing and SOPing. And I'll stop making up verbs the English language doesn't have. Um, your stuff as much as possible because and that goes hand in hand. If you have a closely defined proposition, you'll be able to do that because you minimize variance in the business. You keep doing the same stuff over and over. And with the repeatability comes the insight and the understanding and the depth and expertise that allows you to formalize your expertise. And then it goes the other way around again, because once you have formalized it, it becomes easier to get better results for the people who buy your proposition, right? You probably aware of those benefits. My go-to comparison or metaphor is always no one would go to a doctor and says, we've productized heart surgery. People will probably have problems with that. Everybody, though, goes to a doctor who has a very rigorous process for heart surgery. Any hospital you pick, they will have that written down, right? How does patient onboarding work? How do we prepare the operating theater? What are the 15 checks the nurse has to do on the equipment? I don't know anything about heart surgery, but my point is the process is very narrowly defined and consistent. But if you and I were to go and have heart surgery, God forbid, right? Yours and mine would probably be different because, of course, the process, while consistent, gets customized to the individual patient. I think that's the best approximate metaphor I can find to how consulting should work.
yeah,
And in
completely.
closing, to the fans of productization, I say this: if productization would work in a business-to-business enterprise context, if that ever delivered the full result, why does every enterprise software company in the world still need people to help with integration, change management, rollout, all that stuff? You never get the full value out of the product without someone coming in to consult you. That'll be the end of my TED talk on that
Yeah,
matter.
yeah. No, you only have to look at the Microsoft partner network, the Salesforce partner network, the HubSpot solutions partner network. It's yeah,
Yeah.
you're absolutely right. That kind of value added reseller sort of dynamic where you're bringing expertise to help the implementation. If that weren't there, the adoption, the stickiness of those products just wouldn't
Yeah.
be there at all.
We talk and hear and read about AI so much, and I do think it's fundamentally changing the game. I'm not sure if always for the better, but it's changing it. Even with that, I think you maybe accelerate the need for experienced consulting because so much of what these language models, or in other cases, it's just algorithms, sorting algorithms or whatever, right? What these engines seem capable of doing is they take away the menial task, which used to be junior work in the past, and they produce results which do need human oversight by someone who really knows what they're doing. So I could see that the more these automations or the more these partly self-directing systems come in, the greater the need for real experts to, yes, not be there for 6 months, but maybe just take a look. But still, you still need the expertise customized or applied to the specific situation to get the full value out of the system. Not good news if you're capability and capacity selling, because that bench of 50 juniors, I don't know what to say to them, right, in the next couple of years.
Yeah.
But if you have a type proposition and you have true expertise to sell,
Yeah.
yeah, I could see that maybe going your way a little bit in the near term,
Well, yeah, we
at
talked
least.
about this with Professor Joe Omani about the idea of the traditional pyramid style model of consultancy, perhaps moving to a diamond shape where the juniorization is kind of gone thanks to AI. We also spoke with Amber Shakir about the rise of AI in consulting, the opportunities, but also the threats as well. So do look at our back catalogue of the Consultancy
Yeah,
Edge. Go and check
absolutely.
out some of
That
those.
I'm going
Those
to check that
episodes.
out because I'm interested
Great.
in that. It's definitely it will do something to the, as it's called, the leverage model of the pyramid, right?
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
I will not make a prediction as to what my expectation would be. Yeah, the bottom probably breaks away, and but the demand for the top notch of the could go up, right?
Mm.
That's I think it's called Jevons paradox. I'm mispronouncing the name probably, but if the prices for something go down because you have efficiency in the system with automation,
Yeah.
that usually just drives the demand up. So yeah, there might be more work to do for people who really know what they're doing in their respective fields, right? Yeah.
Florian, reflecting on AI, I mean, and aside of AI, what are some of
Yeah.
the other trends, the opportunities that are perhaps sitting before consultancies right now? And if we, again, we draw the line on everything we've done around proposition, positioning, all
Yeah.
of that is tight and ready to go. What else should people be aware of that's perhaps on the horizon, heading off any potential sort of issues, opportunities, as I say, or
Yeah.
blockers to their progress?
So you said besides AI, I'll just use it as a jump off point. So obviously there are opportunities around those solutions. Let's just take LLMs for content creation, where the way in which teams operate might change a little bit, right? The typical, oh, I interview the subject matter expert from the practice and then I write something up and send it back to them for editing. It takes 4 weeks. Why not equip those guys with a brief LLM that helps them write the first draft in minutes, send it to you, the marketing team, and now you do the policy. Like there might be some operational effects to this, and I think there is significant opportunity there. And I mean, the tools exist and prop up everywhere, so people can have to have a look. The other thing, though, I see that immediately emerges from that as a risk is people are just going to be fed up with AI slop pretty quickly. So I mean, we had this problem in the past with SEO agency generated articles, and this is not my dig on the SEO agencies. They don't know better.
Mm.
But if you are the expert in cloud security and you work with CIOs all day and with you do pen testing and I don't know what else, and you are in the trenches and you then just hire an SEO agency where you expect some 23-year-old who's never done your work at that level to write a 5 headline listicle about why cloud security is great. Well, that your expertise doesn't come through. That's just not the design of the system you set up. So the same I think is true is if you're not careful with how AI gets leveraged and deployed, then right, you're at risk of just increasing the noise that's in the internet already.
Mm.
Which to flip that, that is exactly the opportunity to do the opposite of that. And that is in part an argument about the quality of thought leadership and the insight and the expertise, which that's been made to death, and I will not repeat it. What I also often see, or what we often come across, is that firms could do a better job of letting their people and their culture shine through in, let's just say, their collateral, right? The marketing materials, the way they present themselves, and so forth. If I come across your firm and you're a boutique and you're trying to impress me by being as refined and professional, and I'll say boring as one of the big four, I have the same distant professionalized experience as I go visit your website or I see a webinar. But then I talk to your experts, and they opinionate it. I don't know. They curse about stuff that irritates them in their like they're just normal human beings, but that's not shining through at scale. That's a missed opportunity, right? And maybe continuing from there, if you can push even further and have like a true point of view in the framing for the expertise you deliver for the proposition you have, um, or even better, an entire bank of strong opinions to underpin. You said we did the positioning work to underpin your position, or also help me as a buyer understand why, if you start here with your positioning, this is your specific methodology for delivering a project. Typically, in the middle is your opinion as a firm that this is the best way to do it. Like we built this process because we believe it's our conviction that this is how it's done properly. Well, say that then. I don't know if I'm making sense, but that being more opinionated, being more outgoing, more explicit with the stuff, and that's the funny part. You're thinking anyways.
Yeah,
Let's not kid ourselves
yeah.
because you're the expert. You get angry at the same stuff all the time. You've just kept the lid on it because somewhere along the journey, someone told you that it would be unprofessional to lead with that stuff. I think I doubt it was ever true, to be quite honest. But I think it's definitely over in this day and age.
I
So
completely agree with that. I think the filter that people are applying to themselves and what they're saying is far too rigid, and in fact, I mean, you can of course go too far with what you're saying. You can be too polarizing. You can be too controversial. But assuming that you've found the right level, I think you're right. People don't speak as they
yeah,
do as human beings a lot of the time. They do add these filters, especially when they know it's going to go out on social media because they've heard the cautionary
yeah,
tales and they feel that something that's a little bit more vanilla and run of the mill is the safe way to go.
yeah.
But safe doesn't get you the wins, does it, Florian?
Exactly. So, no, and it's and the problem is it almost there is so it's safe. Yes, maybe it seems safe from a is this ready for the boardroom perspective, but if you're then selling it to a technical buyer who doesn't want to read this fluff anyway, how safe is it really, right? Like that's the one thing. And then, but adding to what you just said, yes, playing it too safe, one risk. The other risk, of course, is to do it for its own sake, right? You have lots of branding, big
Yeah.
letter words. The effort is on every third poster and whatnot, and you're using dialect language nobody understands or urban slang just for the sake of it. That also doesn't help. My filter would always be if it's rooted in your expertise domain and based on observable facts, like facts I could see even if I didn't have your education or your depth of expertise, it's probably okay to say it,
Yeah.
right? If people say, hey, just implementing Snowflake is not the same as a digital transformation, that might sound very provocative. Everybody working in IT will say, yeah, actually, yeah. And they'll thank you for being the one in the room who finally said what everybody was thinking anyways all
Yeah.
the time, which that's sort of a trick, right?
Yeah. I
In
love
that
that.
sense.
Yeah. Excellent.
Um, I would have one last point, and we can spar this. I'm not entirely sure if it's true or not, but with regards to marketing opportunities, I'm wondering if offline discoverability, and we can have a discussion of what that is, needs to make a comeback for a variety of reasons. I see LinkedIn posts about the death of SEO in my feed every day. I'm not too concerned because most of my clients never were good at SEO to begin with. And if you read the studies, it's not that much of a relevant channel for services buying anyways. I might get into fights with that because, and I know firms who have been quite successful with SEO, so okay. But I have questions about the channel anyways. But the point is, I read that every day, and I get bored by it. But I do think there's something to the idea of digital channels not just getting more and more saturated. That's always true. We always had that. But they are degrading as in the platforms providing them let their products deteriorate, right? Facebook is now a nightmare. Google search doesn't work anymore. I'm not going to comment on X. LinkedIn experience will vary wildly. Like mine is good because I built my feed brick by brick, right? Like I have you in the podcast, for example, show up in there. Other people I like to read from. I, but I have like if clients complain to me, oh, I only see those. Oh, I got my umpteenth AWS certificate. I'm like, I never see those, but I get it. Majority of people does that, and so they just turn off. Now you mentioned geopolitical risk out there. I don't want to delve into that because I have no predictions whatsoever. But all those certainties from the past, if you had a significant budget spent with a US provided advertiser and whatnot, that and the unit economics and all that stuff behind that suddenly pulled into question because nations are throwing tariffs around and whatnot. So all I'm saying is maybe it's time to rediscover the opportunities that direct mail offer, having fireside chats at your offices, maybe plural, right, can provide. All these things I think might become more important. Also, we mentioned this before in the face of AI slop. You and I are on a Zoom call right now, so I can tell it's not with reasonable confidence say it's not a chatbot. Even better if you sit face to face in a room, right? So I think the value of that old school stuff will go back up again. And
Yeah,
I would, if I had to make decisions around budgets and stuff, I would ask the question, say, do we have good ideas for that? And
I love
I
it.
should brackets better ideas than buying a booth at someone else's trade show, right? Which that can be, that's a whole different discussion. But
Absolutely right.
yeah,
I think the dynamic has got to be a factor in choosing those offline channels, of course. And I think there are so many opportunities. We've used lumpy mail campaigns in recent times, for example, that direct mail approach, but something that's quite provocative and again attention worthy. But you can back it up with reasoning and the right hooks and conversation starters. Round tables are fantastic for those
yeah,
consultancies looking to bring together leaders in their sector around their area of expertise to kind of fuel that. So I think you're right. That idea of offline discoverability is a fantastic opportunity. And it means, let's face it, that we're swerving that
yeah.
online space, which is more and more noisy. I know it sounds cliche to say it, but the rise of content, the rise of AI driven content, and the fluff,
The slop.
the slop. Yeah, absolutely. I think that's the
Yeah,
perfect
generated
description
on
for it.
a with a click on a fly, and then yeah, that's
Yeah,
if you're in the business of or if your business is based, I should say, on building trusted relationships. Feeding me stuff that you had produced for cents on the dollar just because you could get it for cheaper is not the way to do it.
yeah. Content for
Literally not.
content's sake. Absolutely.
Yeah.
Florian, I want to reflect on the fact that just come back to your marketing expertise, make the most of the fact that we've got you today. And one of the biggest challenges that we've seen again with consultancies is the kind of back and forth, the roller coaster aspect of big focus on pipeline and new business gets replaced by delivery as soon as there's some wins and some deals
Yeah.
come over the line. This idea that perhaps some of our senior consultants quite often are stolen away from delivery activities in quiet times to focus on marketing, but then we lose them, and by the time it's becoming prevalent that we need a new client, we've
Yeah.
taken our eye off the pipeline again. So that's sort of that roller coaster dynamic, the feast and famine. What is the best way to consistently market your business? And perhaps we can talk about those offline aspects as well,
Yeah.
with consistency, but also resource that properly. Because as you mentioned, you may need to get to a certain size before you're going to make your first marketing hire. So what are your tips for perhaps some of the smaller end of the boutiques and how they might leverage?
Yeah. So the trick I think is to first realize the last point you just said is it requires investment. So there's no answer I can give that says, oh, you don't have to put the time in or you
Yeah,
don't have to put the money in. So I always make the joke, I don't know how well that translates into English, but to my German clients, I say the problem with ROI is that if you want to have the R, you
you got to
gotta
make the
make the
I.
I first, right? So sorry, it reads backwards, right? So okay. That said, there are ways to streamline this significantly, and the recommendation there would be to build a system that tries to strike a balance between something business developy happens every day in the firm,
Yeah,
or at least multiple times per week, right? For the very small teams, and that you can reasonably but that you can do with reasonable efficiency and without sacrificing quality too much. And the trick there is to build a single program and to just rerun that all the time. If you're a small firm, right? If you're larger, you'll have to do that multiple times. But I think that the playbook we often bring starts with, I mentioned this earlier, the service design, or the idea of even one step further, sorry, above the services. If you have the positioning nailed, the next question you should ask yourself is what is the multi-year client journey to success? So we have a proposition, right? And I don't know, in the case of the visible authority, build a high performance consultancy, right? Now you should have a good answer to the question, how does it look like? And you should be able to show a client milestones. You start here, then the next move is this, next move is this, next move is this. Milestones are not services. These are just things the client will sort of milestones the clients will achieve in working with your firm over several years. And there are services mapped to those milestones, right? So it is similar, but it's not the same. Once you have that designed, you can start and think about, okay, the first milestone or the initial service we'd like to guide people to, right? That's the first stop, or that's the first success point, the conversion point of our lead generation efforts.
Yeah.
What could a program look like that gets people to that decision, do the first milestone by the first service? And as other people will tell you, there's a very no limited number of things you can do. It's a 2 by 2 square, right? You can do things directly or indirectly. Um, and you can do that one to many or one to few. If you say direct, then it's either direct outreach and sales, or you can pay money and it's ads, same idea, but at scale. If it's indirect, you can either network or you can publish. I hate the word content. It better be not just content, it better be something worth reading and maybe piquing some interest. The default recommendation there would be to ideally do ideally do three
Yeah.
simultaneously. Ads, I'll put a pause on. They make a lot of sense and they can be beautiful, but let's figure out whether what we're doing works first as we build out the program. Ideally, we would all do all three. If that is too much, then kill one, but do at least two. A typical design we often land on is do networking, not sales, networking through social media. That means reaching out to people directly, cold outreach to people, but not to sell them anything, just to establish the relationship. And we can have a conversation about how you can maybe get that to work. And also then thought leadership of publishing, as we would have called it in the past. The firm should be doing something on social media and or a blog and or a newsletter or whatever it is. But that's what go-to-market means. You have to take your stuff to market with some regularity. And firms often say, oh, that's too much work, whatever. That then is the question about how we get efficient about this. The answer is if your positioning is clear, or in our case, if your value proposition has been refined, typically the positioning or the value proposition includes some concepts that raise questions. Case of TVA, build a high-performing consultancy. Okay, what is a high-performing consultancy? How do I build the way? How do I know I'm doing it right? What am I doing? So you can derive a bunch of questions, and that's not your content strategy, but those are your pillar themes. And we usually say, never ever have more than 7. That's already outrageous. See if you can condense it down to 5, maybe 4. That's all you ever write about. Done, period. If it's just me, you don't get to do the office dog post or the photo op from the outing with the colleagues. You never. Everything that happens on the channel is those 5 themes. That's how it's tied back to the value proposition. And all that should lead to a conversion point, and this is important, that sits before the initial milestone and before the initial service. And that could be, and you can insert whatever you want to do here, a fireside chat, a webinar, a meet and greet. We work with a client that did factory visits. Okay, why not? It needs to be something of enough value for the client to say yes.
Yeah.
And it needs to be something that is either constrained in scope to the point where you can actually do it for free,
Yeah.
or it is so constrained in scope that you can, if you charge for it, it still can be a loss leader. So I'm not saying make a profit on it, but if you charge on it, you can be made whole and still justify the time. Okay.
Yeah.
So the guys who did factory visits didn't do them for free, but they didn't charge their normal day rate for that either. So that is the point. And if you combine all these things, you now have a design system where you have a lot of clarity about the journey overall. So if people come in and convert, you can speak to them about the entire journey. You can build the conversion points based on that journey. You wouldn't believe the number of firms who can build their first webinar just explaining the journey and how that works. Like present your framework. That's your webinar. No need to ever make up another one. Just build
Yeah.
one, run it forever. Um, Improve over time, by the way, obviously. So we have that in hand, and we now know, okay, what else do we need to do? Okay, outreach. Probably we can do that quite efficiently using LinkedIn Sales Navigator, maybe some automation. It's Don't quote me on it, but I will say it's maybe okay to automate the reaching out, so the initial connection request. If people respond, it has to be you, at least on the outset, so you
Yeah.
can have honest conversation, learn. And we have the content creation piece, but again, you have the pillar topics. You can Google copywriting frameworks. You maybe have an AI LLM. Equip your best people for some self-service, and plus you probably have, if you have smart people on the team, there will be some of the I need to write to think types. They
Yeah.
probably didn't think about themselves as content creators for marketing, but just, you know, bring them into the effort. And then the last thing I'll say is wherever you can, try to make the Venn diagram of content created for a client and content created for marketing, just make that a circle.
Mhm.
Consultants create content all the time, no excuses. They just do that because they need to answer an RFP or build a deck or respond to a client email. So it's an entire separate podcast to discuss processes that can help you siphon this off and convert it into marketing content. But just the idea, right? The more you can make this an overlap, that's the efficiency supercharger in that model. So to recap, build the customer success journey, figure out how you would talk about and present that. That's your conversion point, and then from there backwards, build a streamlined system. If you go with a mixture of LinkedIn facilitated networking, not necessarily sales, and content, you can go a long way. And the trick to unlocking content efficiency is to always reuse, repurpose
Yeah.
the stuff you do on the job anyways.
That's fantastic practical tips there, Florian. Wonderful to see and really, really useful. One thing I really want to sort of wrap things up on now is our snog, marry, avoid feature. And this is where a snog is a quick win in a consultancy. A marry is something for the long term, something you couldn't absolutely live without. And of course, the avoid is what would you ditch from your consultancy tomorrow to make it more effective, efficient, successful? Let's start with the snog. What is a quick win that consultancies can put inside of their business today or tomorrow
Oh, I love
to
this.
great effect?
So seamlessly continuing from our tactical tips question, I talked about the Venn diagram, the overlap. Set up a process. Maybe it's a WhatsApp chat where you can, or it's two WhatsApp chats. Sorry, set up a process where you can collect questions, client questions, your practitioners get that your teams never want to answer again.
Okay.
Also collect the team's answers. It's content, right? The other thing is ask your teams to send you the last client question that really had them pause and think, and ask them to submit their answers. Again, that's that's
Wonderful.
an article,
I love that. It's kind of
right?
like that FAQ dynamic.
That's a
Yeah.
that's a quick win that takes you will have a content plan in no time.
Yeah.
Done, right? Yeah.
Yeah. I've got a book recommendation on that because Marcus Sheridan wrote the book, They Ask, You Answer. It's along
Yeah.
those lines about installing that in the business. Fantastic content. Florian, a marry, what is something to install in the consultancy of today that for the long term, what couldn't you live without?
Yeah, I'm a huge fan of making sure that there's enough non-consultancy related training and education in the firm. I would look into some adjacent fields, and they are obvious, so no surprises there. But if you can pick up a few books or courses or whatever on didactics, as school teachers are being trained that, um, um, psychology, because the majority of the business is, yes, the core of it is technical or business stuff. But we said it before, the magic happens in the application of the expertise, which that always is people. And I think it's a huge win if you get to invest in that all the time. The immediate outcome you can get from it, for example, if you invest in stuff like didactics or
Yeah.
being better, getting better at explaining stuff, is you build what my colleague Luke calls the collective sales capability. You get more people who get better at explaining the value you bring to clients, and who doesn't want that, right? So non-consulting education, adjacent but non-consulting education would be my merit piece.
Incredible. Okay. And what's the avoid? What would you ditch from your consultancy today to make it more effective?
I'm done with tech band-aids. They get stuck on underlying, more foundational problems. I will give one example, and I don't mean to hate on the people who built those tech solutions, but they just have to face facts. There's so much software out there that helps you. This is probably for the larger firms, but that knowledge databases and software that helps you efficiently manage your presentation stack, so you can reduce the response time to RFPs, right? And you can make better use of proposals you've done in the past. It's the technology solution to fix a strategy issue. The strategy issue is being where we started our conversation. You shouldn't be in the business of having all kinds, doing so many, so different RFPs that you need a robot to help you find the last ones. That's not the way to play this game. You should fix the strategy and make sure that your proposition is to refine to the point where you have one sales presentation per service group, and that's it. That's it. That's the same presentation that gets sent whenever the group needs to present itself somewhere. Don't buy software fixes. I think there's more examples to that. Sorry for the dig on the proposal guys or the RFP guys, but it's wherever strategy and systematization can help do that, don't buy the software.
Incredible. Thank you so much, Florian. I've got some real golden nuggets from having you on today. I'm so glad you joined us. Thank you, Florian, for joining the Consultancy Edge today.
Thank you for having me. That was great.